You're very welcome. Mick Rooney, investigative journalist, Radio Espial, radioespial.com. Mick Rooney, Radio Espial on YouTube. Let's get straight into our case and our timeline for this episode 49. As you can see up there, we're dealing with the case of Marie Kilmartin from 1993. We're going to start with our case summary. Marie Kilmartin, aged 35, of Beladd, County Laois, Ireland, attended work at a local daycare nursing home. It's what's called the P.A.S.S Centre, Portlaoise Area Social Services. She attended that at 11 a.m. on the 16th of December 1993. At 3:45 p.m, two of Marie's female co-workers dropped her home and watched her walk to the front door. When Marie's housemate arrived home from her job as a nurse at 6 p.m, she found that Marie was not there and none of the lights in their house had been switched on. The housemate also found the house alarm was set and Marie's groceries were still unpacked, hanging on a kitchen chair. A later forensic examination of Marie's home uncovered no evidence of a break-in, nor what may have led to her sudden disappearance. Gardaí did discover that around 4:20 p.m. on the same day, 16th of December 1993, a phone call was made to Marie's landline phone, which lasted 2.5 minutes. The call was traced to a payphone in Portlaoise near St. Fintan's Hospital. A witness would later come forward stating that she saw a lone male entering the phone box near St. Fintan's Hospital at the time the call was made. She described the man as 30 years of age, around 5'6" to 5'9" in height, and having dark hair. This particular individual has never been publicly identified. She was spotted the following morning at two locales by people known to her and had some brief exchanges with them. On the 10th of June 1994, 6 months after her disappearance, Marie's body was discovered in Pims Lane near Mount Mellick, County Laois. I think it was around 16 kilometres from where her home was. Her body was partially concealed in a bog drainage ditch with a cement block placed in it. A gas canister and the remains of a pram were also discovered close to her remains. It is likely the receding water had led to the discovery in the remote bog area. A post-mortem would reveal she had been strangled and there was no evidence of sexual assault. Let's move to our full case background and a little bit more about Marie. Marie Kilmartin was born in 1958 in Ballinasloe, Galway, to Fred and Rose Kilmartin. For a time, the family also lived in County Sligo. She had 3 other siblings, her sister, Teresa, and 2 brothers, Tony and Noel. Marie's father, Fred, was a successful and well-known businessman in Ballinasloe, Galway, and also at Athlone, Westmeath. He ran a Ford dealership and garage, and the family lived very comfortably. Tony, her brother, followed their father into the family dealership business as he got older. The Kilmartins were a quiet, religious and reserved Irish family. Marie, born in 1958, by her early teens, was diagnosed with a psychiatric condition. It would impact her development in later teenage years and made her somewhat cautious and vulnerable. Her teenage school years were not always easy, and she would develop very particular routines. While she interacted well with people and was outgoing and a very giving and loving soul, she maintained a tight and trusted social circle. She loved singing and dancing. One of her favourite musical performers was Tracy Chapman. In late 1979, aged 21, Marie discovered she was pregnant. Despite being a young adult, she was simply not prepared for the responsibility and future it would bring. The impending birth sent her into a downward spiral of stress and worry, and she was placed by her family into the care of St. Fintan's Psychiatric Hospital in Portlaoise, and for a short time into a mother and baby care institution. In the late stages of pregnancy, she formed a lasting bond with one of the nurses there, Patricia Doyle, Pat Doyle. In March 1980, Marie gave birth to a baby girl. As much as Marie wanted to keep her newborn, she wanted to name her Rosemary after her own mother. But family decisions and after medical advice were made, ultimately her baby was adopted by her extended family, taken to Dublin within days of the birth, and her daughter, christened Aine, would then settle with her adopted parents in Galway. As Marie's mental health condition began to improve the following year, she was finally discharged from St. Fintan's Hospital. Now very close friends, she and nurse Patricia Doyle would end up sharing a home in Beladd off the Stradbally Road, Portlaoise, from around, I think it was around late 1981. In Patricia Doyle's words, taken from the book Missing by Barry Cummins, in Patricia's words, my heart went out to her when I first saw her. She's talking about Marie. She was such a frightened young woman, and on top of being in a psychiatric hospital, here she was pregnant. She was very lonely and very distressed. I spent a good deal of time with her right from the start. At first it was a nurse and patient relationship. Over time it became better. It was a friendship of equals, and we ended up sharing a house in Portlaoise for over a decade. Marie had developed a mild form of agoraphobia as well. She was very anxious and uncomfortable going out at night in the dark and being placed in new or stressful situations. She wasn't comfortable in large public areas with strangers she didn't know, needed very set routines and a reliance on a trusted small network of friends. She found that when she started as a volunteer worker for a few hours a day at a local elderly nursing centre, she was at her happiest. It suited her. She was in a safe environment and she thrived in it. She spent her daily hours there, helping at meal times, chatting with the residents, playing cards and other games with them, and slowly but surely she found her own place and grew in confidence. She was often a daily mass goer, and her routine was to go to the care centre for work around 11 a.m. until around 3 p.m. Occasionally, after work, she might visit a neighbour or a friend at their house, invite someone over to her house at Beladd for tea and a chat, but generally she avoided the late night bustle of pub life and the challenges that brought with it. Marie didn't drive. Mobile phones were not a thing for most people in 1993. She often walked to and from the care centre for a part-time volunteer job, but in the late dark winter afternoons she'd usually be dropped home by a work colleague. On Thursday the 16th of December 1993, two work friends drove her home. She was in good form and had been offered the invitation to attend a Christmas work party that evening. It was sort of a girls' get-together. All that was known then, once inside the house, Marie received a phone call on her house landline and left soon after. Her body was found in a bog 6 months later. We're going to bring in Kieran now, very shortly, and we're going to go to our full timeline of this case, the case of Marie Kilmartin. That image you're seeing there, that is the general Portlaoise area. You're seeing a road there in yellow. That is effectively the Dublin Stradbally Road. Now, just south of that, and literally meters off it, is the Beladd Lower Road where Marie lived. Everything north, and effectively in a square where you see all those red labels on Google, that square above, that sort of 2/3 area above the road in yellow, is pretty much every location that we're going to mention in this timeline. And I'm talking about the St. Fintan's Hospital. I'm talking about the Midlands Healthcare Centre. I'm talking about Crazy Prices. Any of the locations you hear mentioned are all in that section, in that top 2/3 section. So they're all quite close together, so you can get an idea. The only location that's not included here is the Pims Lane remains that were found. We'll go into that in our timeline. It's time now to bring in Kieran McConnell from Irish Cold Cases, Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. Kieran, as always, part of the furniture. You're welcome again.
Thanks for having me back, Mick. I just want to say first,
I can't get rid of you, for God's sake. And people
no,
keep
at this
saying,
stage,
you interrupt Kieran too much, and I have to say at the start, because this has come up once or twice before, and Kieran will attribute to this. Please understand that I'm going through a timeline. I'm trying to keep us on track through the timeline, and also Kieran is in one country, I am in another country, and there's a slight delay, and sometimes when we speak we might speak over each other because we're dealing with that delay. It's not that we're deliberately interrupting each other.
we need to find funding for a studio.
Yeah. Any takers out there, please come in, because if we continue going on with this, we're ready to make the next step in our June planning, and we'll talk about that more towards the end of the program.
Fair play to you, Mick, for the work you put in on this one, and the one we did on Dean Roach. Like, that's a lot of work in a short space of time. There's a lot of information on both of them. But I was gonna say, like, I'm glad that I've actually known about this case for a long time, because it would take you a few years to get your head fully around, like, just the timeline and the circumstances and everything. Because it seems like there's like a lot of none of the information is very centralized on this case. Like, there's bits and pieces kind of everywhere, and you have to like stick it together through various books and newspaper articles and stuff like that.
Yeah, this case, isn't it? We had another case recently like this, and was it the Barbara Walsh case? I can't remember what. I think it might have been the Barbara Walsh case, where,
Mm.
and some of these cases, as Kieran has just said, I promise you, they're not cases that we suddenly look at last week or the week before. We have 60 to 70 cases on our database, active cases. Some of them have reached conclusions, some of them haven't, and we're looking at those all the time. And what case do we do next? What's most appropriate? And a lot of it is to do with information gathering. When's the right time? When we feel we have a timeline to do and present to all of yous. And I think it was the Barbara Walsh case. Was a case that somebody actually suggested to me, a subscriber. I think it might have been Brian Goggins, and I said, Brian, I'm not sure, but I promise you, we've looked at that case, but I'm not sure we have all the information together, and that was several months ago. And then in more recent weeks, we looked at it again, and I said to Kieran, have a look at this case again. I think we might be ready to go with it. And that's the way an awful lot of these cases happen. And Marie Kilmartin's case is another classic example. We've both been looking at this case for years. It's on our database, and we just reached a time where we said, okay, I said to Kieran, I think we've got enough here. I think we've pulled together
I
enough.
think I think we've like generally looking through the timeline beforehand. It looks like most of it's covered. But one thing I would say before we start, like
Mm-hmm.
when you first look at this case originally, you kind of think it's similar to a few other cases at the time, like Patricia Doherty or Antoinette Smith. But it's actually
Yeah,
this is just based on where Marie was found alone. Like this was somebody that was local
absolutely.
to
Yeah,
the area and
yeah,
somebody that was known to Marie.
yeah.
There's
Yeah. We're
very
gonna
little doubt about that.
talk about that more in the timeline, and that's why it's important, particularly media and public perception of a case like Marie Kilmartin can be presented in one way, but when you sit with us this evening and we go through this case, you're going to have a whole different perspective on how you think this case has been presented in the media. Because sometimes what we do here, well, that's exactly what we do here. You know, how accurate have the media been and how fair have they been on covering a case, and how well is it classified? And I think you might, if you think you've heard something of the Marie Kilmartin case, and you heard about that, yeah, I think this, or you might just have a different opinion when we finish this timeline. Let's get started. Okay, our timeline and case analysis. We're starting, okay, you've already heard the case summary and background. We're starting with Thursday, the 16th of December, 1993, and this is day of disappearance, at least known to people, family, loved ones. We're starting at 8 or 9 a.m. That image you're seeing there, that is 12 Beladd Lower, I think it's what it's called. Sharing a house for more than 10 years in Beladd off the Stradbally Road, Marie Kilmartin and Patricia Doyle rise and have tea together. It's an ordinary working day for both of them in the week. Patricia has to start work early, but Marie is not due for her voluntary care work until 11 a.m. This was also Marie's last day in work before the Christmas holiday period. Marie is planning to spend Christmas with her parents in Galway and already has her bag packed and presents bought before her departure for the following Christmas week. Her parents will pick her up from Beladd, and they also have a dinner outing booked in the nearby Killishean Hotel on Wednesday the 22nd of December, that the following week. I know that image is a bit dark. We did try to, Erica did try to adjust it and brighten it. It doesn't, there's not too much in it. We couldn't, there are other images we've dealt with where we have improved them and sharpened them. That bag sat on our bed. Kieran?
Yeah, it's quite well improved. You can make it out. It's, remember them kind of handheld bags that people had in the 90s, the kind
Yeah,
of sports
it's
one. That's the
classic
kind of leathery one,
hold
isn't it?
heavy hold all
Yeah, it wouldn't that
leather
exactly. Yeah,
style bag. According to our housemate, she was sort of slowly over the previous week or two packing this bag, putting stuff in, you know, sort of building, you know, as you do going on holidays, you know. We're kind of the same here in this household. You know, you're going on holidays and the hold all bags and the suitcase are already out and stuff gets thrown in it, and then, you know, the last weekend before you go away,
they take it
finally
out and wear
you're
it before
packing
you
everything
go.
away. You know,
Yeah,
this is just that classic example. It sat in Marie's bedroom, and she was slowly just packing stuff, obviously very much looking forward to spending Christmas time over a number of days with her parents. Now, and again, to reflect, always the planner, Marie is talking to Patricia about who might give her a lift home from work on a murky late winter afternoon. There's a bit of a Christmas party planned that day for the staff and the residents at the elderly nursing home where she works. Some of her fellow female care workers are also planning to have their own Christmas drinks party later that evening. But Marie is at this stage that morning, talking to her housemate Patricia, is unsure if she will attend it, even if it's quite local and easy to get to. So Patricia, who works as a nurse, she's off out. Now Marie is a religious and a mass goer, but it is unknown if she ventured out for a service that morning. Whether she did or didn't, she arrived at work at the nursing home around 11 a.m. as normal, having walked the 2 kilometres there from her Beladd house just off the Stradbally Road. Sometime between 3 and 3:40 p.m. So the day's there was a lot going on that day. This was, if I haven't mentioned in the time, this was Marie's last day finishing up before the Christmas period in work. With the festivities of the day complete in the nursing centre, co-workers and friends Francis Bleach and Francis Conroy drove Marie home to Beladd. While the working day shift normally finished at 3 p.m, it was already well after the hour, and the 3 arrived at number 12 Beladd Lower at around or just before 4 p.m. The 2 women declined the invitation of a cup of tea offered by Marie. Before driving off, they watched as Marie got in safely through, I think I've mentioned it, a side entrance. It was actually the back entrance on the house. Some of these houses have been adjusted and have a side entrance. Some of them have a back entrance. It was a back entrance entry that Marie usually used, and her housemate.
I was going to say, I think Marie regularly got lifts home from various people, didn't she? I think that was her routine. She'd walk to work and then someone would give her a lift home. That was
quite often she walked to work, but in the afternoons she would get a lift home, and particularly in the winter where the weather was bad, it was cold, and obviously, remember,
it wouldn't always be the same people giving her a lift.
No. There was various different workers, different people, neighbours who worked in that area. And in reference to the map, the one thing I will say about that Portlaoise area, Portlaoise Hospital, the medical centres, there's a veterinarian clinic in that area. This area absolutely thrives, and the medical industry is vital to this area. There are so many people who rely on it, who work in that area. So that's one thing to consider. It's a major area, and the people in the area, you go up probably any street of 50 houses and you'll probably find dozens and dozens of people work in somehow connected with the health sector within the Portlaoise area, because there are so many.
It's a very busy place as well, due to the prison and the hospital.
You remind me. The prison as well is also located in that area.
Yeah, so it's constantly. Any time I've ever been there, it's always busy.
Yeah. So we cannot know everything that Marie did after entering her home when she was dropped there by her 2 work colleagues, but some things can be ascertained. We're going to take an insert now. This insert comes from a 1993 crime line reconstruction, and this is Francis Conroy and Francis Beecher that I mentioned earlier. So let's take a look at that.
Mary Kilmartin is 36 years of age. When last seen, she was wearing a white tweed double-breasted coat with big lapels and a black scarf with red flowers and specks of grey. Mary moved to Portlaoise from County Galway in 1981 and lived here at number 12 Beladd, a house she bought shortly after she came to live in the town. On the afternoon she went missing, Thursday the 16th of December, Mary walked from her home to the daycare centre on the New Road, where she attended a Christmas party for senior citizens. Mary worked throughout the year in the day centre as a part-time voluntary assistant.
We were invited that day down to the day centre for our Christmas dinner, and she was there. So it was arranged beforehand that I would bring her home because she was nervous of coming up the road on her own. So Francis and I brought her up here to her house, and she wanted us in for tea or coffee. And we were both going out that night, and we felt we hadn't time, so we said some other time. So we waited until she went into the back of the house. And that's the last we saw of her. Now I thought she was to me she was Mary. She hadn't changed, and we talked about Christmas and what she was going to do, and her parents were coming over on the following Wednesday night, and they were going out for a meal to the Collision. And to me, she always was. I felt in good form. Yeah.
So 4:25, 4:30 p.m, the house landline phone rings and is answered. The last call lasts for about 2.5 minutes and has been placed from a coin box across the road from St. Fintan's Hospital near the Portlaoise town centre, not very far away. It would seem reasonable to assume it was Marie who answered the phone, being already dropped home, and Patricia Doyle was still at work. It is around 4:30 p.m. that the house alarm is reset back on. Now around 5 p.m, what has not been widely disclosed publicly by Gardaí is that Marie was also seen later after leaving the house in Beladd and close to the call box used to call her home, in the company of a male matching a similar description to what a female hitchhiker had witnessed at around 4:30 p.m. That's at the call box. This was at the St. Peter and Paul's church car park. There also a sighting of a beige coloured car which may be connected to the sightings. But Gardaí, and they've been very circumspect around this, have never properly confirmed whether this sighting is valid or they later in years eliminated it.
I was going to say, the information about the beige car and the car park at the St. Peter's and Paul Church with Marie and the person, the only place I ever found that information on was a podcast called the Men's Ria podcast. Nothing I'm doubting the information or anything like that, but that information is not widely known at all.
I have, in the last 48 hours, and I've listened to the podcast that you're referring to, I have asked, I can't go into it, people involved in this case, and they will not confirm that information. I respect what was done in that podcast and the information presented as best it could be. I cannot here now sit and say I know where the source of that information came from. It's not for me to answer. It was in a podcast. I don't know. And it is the reason why I say I am not aware whether that information is valid or whether it existed and then maybe was later eliminated or where it was reported, because I cannot find out any information on that.
No, but the one thing I would say, the Men's Ria podcast, in fairness, it's very deeply researched and it's very credible. I wouldn't think there's no way. Well, I would say if it's wrong, they got fed misinformation. They wouldn't have.
They either got fed misinformation or information came out originally, because I've also gone through the original newspapers and archives that I would have access to as a journalist, that mightn't be easily available to a lot of people online, and maybe it was a snippet that was referenced somewhere. Again, how accurate it is, I don't know. So I'm not going to stand over this. I don't know, and I haven't made too much of it other than mention it and say I don't know whether that's valid information.
Yeah, it's definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah. 6 p.m. It is now long dark on a wet and cold December evening. So Patricia Doyle arrives back at Beladd from her nursing shift, pulls into the driveway of the house and immediately notices that the lights of the house are off. She presumes Marie has either been delayed on her work shift or has gone out with the girls after work, as she had mentioned with her sitting over a cup of tea that morning. The house is empty, but the house alarm is set as she would expect when no one is at home. The dog is still locked in the shed outside. That's normal for them in the cold winter. There is an unpacked bag of shopping draped over the back of a kitchen chair. She also finds the heating immersion on, something that would only be on when the two women were at home and needed hot water to wash up dishes, or maybe after cooking or run a bath.
Like the shopping and the immersion being on would indicate that she left the house in a rush. But also, then I suppose she did turn the alarm on. But it seems that she left the house in a rush. Would you think?
And maybe didn't have the intention of being out too long, because you're not going to turn the immersion on for a bath or to wash dishes if you're going, well, I'm going to be away 2 hours. So that wouldn't seem to coincide with, oh, she got home, maybe she has freshened up and she decided, do you know what, I will go out with the girls tonight. Well, if she did, she didn't make any phone call to say, will you come and pick me up? She didn't do any of that. So it sounds to me like she left, but she left with the reason being she wasn't expecting to be out too long.
No.
8 p.m. Patricia Doyle becomes increasingly concerned, knowing Marie would likely not stay out this late in the evening without a call to her. She contacts the nursing home where Marie works and is told that she left before 4 p.m. that day, but had not, this is important, but had not attended the later girls' get-together that evening. Marie does not return home to her Beladd home. Patricia will later tell Gardaí that she didn't sleep well that night and was up and down from bed, looking out the window into the early hours of the morning. And we're going to hear and see a snippet of Patricia Doyle's account of that evening and what happened early the following morning. So let's take a look at that.
At 6 o'clock, Patricia Doyle, who shares the house with Mary, returned home from work.
I came off duty at 6 o'clock that evening, and I came home, and I came to the back door, and I thought Mary was here, and I knocked on the door, and then I remembered that she said she was going to the party in the daycare centre and she'd be late. So I came in then into the house, and the shopping that she used to get that day, she left it on the back of the chair, and she left her Christmas presents that she got in the centre on the table. The kettle was plugged in, the alarm was on, the immersion was on for the bath, and the dog was locked into the shed, so the gate was open. So everything was quite normal. That was the normal way that we lived here. You know, that was usually what Mary did in the evenings when she came in. She said to me that morning that she was going to the daycare centre party. It was her last day at work. And she said, do you mind if I stay late with Francis Bleach and Francis Conroy, the two Francis, as she always called them. And then when I came in that evening, I was thinking, I bet you know, it was Christmas time, you see, and I was thinking she's gone out with the women now to some kind of a party or something. But as the night went on, I was awake all night, I was up all night, just looking out the window to see was she coming. No sign. So I was very annoyed, because Mary wasn't like that. Mary was very dependable, and she had a routine, and she stuck to her routine. It was just straight down the line with her. Everything was done, as it should be done with her. I still had to ring Francis Bleach, and I had to, speak to those people. So I went into work, just got into my clothes and went into work, and I left it a while, and then I rang them. But then there was nothing. Nobody knew where she was. Nobody had seen her. There was nothing. And the next thing then, we just reported it to the Gardaí, and the Gardaí came up here, and they said, she went away, and I just said it was something took her out of the house. So I was delighted then when they said the phone call was made to the house, because I knew then that Mary hadn't gone out on impulse, you know what I mean? And I was delighted then. I said to myself,
somebody rang her, someone she knew and trusted rang her, because she wouldn't go out in the dark on her own. So I knew it was somebody she knew and trusted. That Friday, my sister was coming down for me. We were going to have a party here, which she always enjoyed, you know. But, you know, everything was happening for us. And Mary loved that type of thing. She loved people calling, and she loved going out, and, you know, she was really happy. And she had everything done. She had all her Christmas presents packed. She had them all done. She had no more presents to buy. She had them all in the room. She had her bag packed to go home for Christmas. It's in there in the room. I can show it to you. Everything is in it. So if she was thinking of going anywhere, all she had to do, she hadn't even to pack. The bag is there. All she had to do was put it on her back.
Kieran, is there anything you want to add after looking at that?
Not much, but one thing I would say, it's quite well, I'm sure you came across this when you were researching the case, that it's quite well known that Marie didn't like to go outside after dark,
No,
and she'd be quite wary
no,
of
she
being
didn't.
outside. So, like, yeah, I know it's easy for me to say in this situation, but I suppose I'll just come out and say it. But if I was her housemate, I would have rang the guards that night, to be honest.
I'm going to be very blunt now. And I'm going to go through it later. I have a number of red flags on that interview and that piece that you've just seen. There are a number of red flags that concern me, and I'm pretty sure they concerned Gardaí. We'll say no more about that for the moment. Let's move on with our timeline. Friday the 17th of December 1993. This is the following day after disappearance. Marie hasn't come home. We're at 8 to 10 a.m. Patricia Doyle goes into work to start her shift. Her sister is due to visit her and Marie that evening. She waits a while and then contacts Francis Bleach and Francis Conroy, two friends who dropped her home the previous evening. They confirm they had not seen Marie since they dropped her home just before 4 p.m. the previous day. None of the local neighbours or other friends of Marie she contacts have seen her, but one of the neighbours is married to a detective sergeant at Portlaoise Garda station. It is unclear who exactly instigated the Garda alert, the neighbour or Patricia Doyle. However, given Marie Kilmartin's history of mental illness and agoraphobia, a search and investigation is launched within 24 hours of Marie's disappearance. Just as Gardaí are finding out about missing Marie Kilmartin, other sightings come to light, but it will be some time later before Gardaí found out fully about them. What we know about them: on the Friday morning, sometime between 10 and 11 a.m, May White, a local to the area, who knew Marie well, sees her standing in the car park of the Midlands Health Centre in Portlaoise. Before driving off, she rolls down the window and bids Marie a good morning. Marie says hello, but there's no further exchange, and May drives off thinking nothing more.
Would you take that as a bona fide sighting? I think so. She knew her.
Yes, I take any sighting where somebody knows someone far more importantly than I do somebody who doesn't know someone, who knows nothing of them personally, and is purely relying on maybe Garda information. Did you see a person that looked like this? This is the person. Did you see somebody resembling that? I take sightings like this far more importantly, because it's somebody known to the victim, the person being searched for. It's got to be up there. You cannot ignore a sighting like that and say, oh well, maybe you were mistaken. What? So she said hello, May, and it was a complete stranger. Of course, it was Marie.
You know yourself
and,
that you're not mistaken.
And
in such a
just as the next sighting, there's no arguments about it. At 11:45 a.m. to 12 noon p.m, Christine Dwyer comes upon Marie Kilmartin in Crazy Prices supermarket in Portlaoise. She knows Marie well, but is hurrying to an appointment after the supermarket visit. They have a brief exchange of conversation, and Marie appears a little bit nervous and out of sorts to Christine. Marie asks Christine if she could stay a while, but Christine cannot, and the parts. This is the last known sighting of Marie Kilmartin in 1993. Her parents will not become aware of her disappearance until late the Friday evening. Kieran, again, going back to, they're not even just eyewitness reports. There is interaction. There is recognition of one person to another. There is discussion. There's no arguments there that Marie Kilmartin was alive that Friday morning.
Yeah, and there's good location points. So say the first woman, she might have just had to be in that place that morning so she could remember it was the day, and then the other woman could be like, oh yeah, Friday
I had an appointment at the Midlands Health Clinic. I know it. Here's the documentation for it. It can be proven. It's not like where somebody comes forward to Gardaí in later days and says, I think I saw Marie on the Thursday or the Friday. Are you sure? Well, I think so.
If they're going to work on the same place every day, then
her clinic check and the fact that she was there at the Midlands Centre, I mean the person who saw her, can be checked and go, yeah, your appointment was at 10 p.m. a.m. that morning. How long were you there? About 20 minutes. Okay, so sometime after 10:30 you would have emerged and went to the car park, and that's when you saw Marie. That kind of detail can be checked fully by Gardaí. These two witness counts, they're bona fide. They cannot be ignored.
No.
In the following days, what we're going to do is we're going to actually listen to those two accounts from May White and Christine Dwyer. You'll see them, and it's in their own words. You decide how bona fide they are.
Mary was seen again outside the health centre in Portlaoise town.
Well, I was coming out of the health centre on Friday, the Friday morning, the 17th, and as I got into my car and started reversing it, I saw Marie standing over in the corner of the car park. And I rolled down the window and I said, hello, Marie. And she said, hello, May, quietly.
No, May.
Mary was alone and didn't seem to be in the best of form. 2.5 hours later, Mary was seen again in Crazy Price's supermarket by Christine Dwyer, who also knew her well. We've no knowledge of where Mary spent the 2.5 hours between these sightings.
It was on the Friday, and I had already gone out of the shopping centre, forgotten to get something, and I came back in. I heard my name being called. I looked around, and it was Marie, and I went over to her, and she was very shaky and everything, and she was all muffled up in a scarf and coat, and she was pretty upset on that day, very nervous and shaky, her voice trembling and that. And I was going away, and she said, will you come with me? I couldn't. I told her I was in a hurry, and I went and left her.
Now, in the following days of December, Gardaí get access to the telecom area records of a number of landlines in the Beladd and Portlaoise town area, including the house phone number of 12 Beladd Lower, and crucially the call box phone box across the road from St. Fintan's Hospital. A female hitchhiker witness comes forward to say that around 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, December the 16th, she saw a man around 5 foot 8 inches, 30 years of age, with dark hair, enter the phone box for several minutes. Call logs will show that the phone was only used once, and they mean the call box phone was only used once between 4:11 and 4:42 p.m. that day. Despite searches, no further sightings of Marie Kilmartin were ever confirmed, and she was not located. Her parents Fred and Rose never got to spend Christmas 1993 with their beloved daughter. While Marie left number 12 Beladd Lower, her packed bag remained sitting in her bedroom. Her purchased Christmas presents, some of them lay on the kitchen table that she'd bought in recent days to deliver to loved ones, and other presents for our family and friends. They were ready to go for her. As you can probably see, this case isn't going to end well. On Friday, June the 10th, 1994, we are 6 months after. Pat Lynn is the duty officer at Port Arlington Garda Station. He receives a disturbing call sometime after 9:37 p.m. on that summer evening. The light of the day is already beginning to fade. A man has phoned the Garda Station and is certain he has found a body partially submerged in a bog out by Pym's Lane, just north of Mount Mellick, close to the Offaly-Laois border. Tom Deegan, who was a prison officer at Portlaoise, during that day he's on a break. He's in between shifts and out for a ramble with his 2 young children, and he also wants to deliver a flask of tea to his older son Trevor, who was out helping to cut the bog. He finds what he believes to be a body in the receding waters of a bog drainage ditch. A cement block is weighing down the left side of the visible torso. A foot and a boot is partially visible, and there seems to be a gas canister close or around the body. He doesn't want to disturb, understandably, his 2 young children. He gathers them up and he gets back in his car and goes home. Following the completion of his day shift that evening at the prison, alone, he returns at 9 p.m. to be certain of what he'd seen earlier that day. You can imagine what was going on in his head that day. Did I see what I was seeing? Am I mistaken? And it niggled at him all day, and he knew he had to go back. He discussed it with his wife. He goes back. What does he see? There's a pram wheel obscuring a second boot and leg. He leaves the scene and he makes the call to Pat Lynn at Port Arlington Garda Station. Garda Pat Lynn drives immediately to the area and meets Tom Deegan, the prison officer. In that moment, Tom Deegan has no idea he has found the body of Marie Kilmartin, missing for 6 months. That image you're seeing there was an image released, I believe, through the Garda press office. I'm not certain, but it got into media hands, and unfortunately, and we've touched on this before, the media got hold of it and they started altering it. They started deciding they wanted to do their own censorship on it. They wanted to darken it. They wanted to mess with it because of everybody else's sensitivities that they thought was right to do. I'm not criticizing anybody. That's fine. What I'm going to insert now is the actual image itself. Now, I want to stress, we have slightly altered and brightened this image because it was manipulated initially with filters to effectively hide what's there in that photo. And I can understand the reasons, but I don't understand the process and thought line that went through it. If you feel an image is not appropriate to use, don't fucking use it. Fine. Don't publish it and put it out there. This is Detective Phil Lyons at the body site in Mount Mellick. What you're about to see now is the image. We have adjusted it slightly, but the only adjustment we put on this is to bring the lighting slightly up and sharpen it just slightly. And we've highlighted some of the details within it that are not as easily recognizable on the image you're looking at now. So we'll go to that image, and then Kieran wants to come in with a point. Kieran?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I never knew that about the image. That's what I was saying about this case. You always keep learning things. I never knew the image was doctored till we. Yeah, so there you go. That was all I was going to say on that matter. I was going to say, it was some day for your man in work, though, not knowing. When he
to have
went to
gone
work
through
that
that,
day and then
to have
he
gone through
went
that
back.
from the early afternoon,
Yeah.
and to have had that buzzing around his head, and particularly, I suppose, as a prison officer, who, let's face it, through that training, they're sharp, they're aware people, you know. They, you know, and God love them, you know, they have a tough job. They're dealing with tough people in prisons, and I'm sure they've come across bodies within prison, somebody who is deceased, you know. They know what they're looking at. They're much sharper. Yeah, and again, we go back to, you know, we were talking about witnesses earlier, about how reliable witnesses can be. You know, people like, everybody can be mistaken, of course, but people like firemen, police officers, prison officers, you know, people, they have very specific training. They are skilled and far more alert to notice certain things that the rest of us mightn't notice, to trigger things in them. And yeah, my God, what was going through his head that day? And he could have, you know, God forbid, what would have happened if he said, no, you know, put that out of your head. No, you're being stupid. No, it wasn't what you saw. It's probably a teddy bear, a child's toy thrown in there. Look, forget about it. Put it out of your mind and forget. We would not not be where we are now today, possibly.
No, there's people out there that would find a body like that and just walk away and say, oh, I'm not
I'm not touching. I don't want to have anything to do with it. You know, and that's their decision. But you know.
Yeah, it's just some people are like that out there. It brings to mind the taxi driver in the Jojo Dullard case.
Yeah,
such a person, you know, people doing things like this, you know.
Yeah, I think that.
But fair play to him. That guy, he really was on the ball, and he did the right thing with his kids as well, getting them out of there and going back and all. Like,
and doing it in the right frame of mind. Going back, okay, I've done my day's work. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna be certain of what I don't want to make an idiot of myself, and turn up. You know, phone a Garda, they turn up and say, "Geez, what are you at, you clown?" You know, it's a teddy bear in there, you know, or it's something else, you know. But he clearly was certain, even originally, he knew what he was looking at was very likely human remains. The following day, okay, so we're Saturday, June the 11th. We're at 5 to 8 p.m. Okay, so this is the day after the prison guard has notified police that he believes he's found a body. So on Saturday, June the 11th, 5 to 8 p.m, following recovery of that body in Pims Lane at the Bog, it is taken to Tullamore Hospital on Saturday afternoon. State pathologist John Harbison, following an evening autopsy, confirms that the body, when deposited into the water, was manually strangled beforehand, fully clothed, but finds no evidence of a sexual assault. Jewellery, 3 distinctive rings and a guess being the branded watch, a gold necklace, the clothing, matching jacket and skirt, and dental records would later confirm the body to be Marie Kilmartin. Her body has been in the water for a considerable time and likely coincides around the time she disappeared the previous year. This was now a murder case. Items of clothing are shown to Patricia Doyle that Saturday to assist in the identification. At the June 1995 inquest, we'll get to a little bit more about that later, Patricia Doyle will be formally referred to as Marie Kilmartin's housemaid. She formally identifies the clothing shown to her as belonging to Marie. On Tuesday, June the 14th, 1994, Marie Kilmartin is buried following a very large funeral service held at St. Michael's Church in Ballinasloe. On Saturday, June the 25th, 1994, at 8 a.m, units of Portlaoise Gardaí move in on a household in the area and arrest 2 men in relation to the murder of Marie Kilmartin, one in his 50s and another in his late 20s. They are questioned for 12 hours and released without charge. One of the men directly knew Marie. No file is later sent to the DPP. Kieran, is there anything you want to say there?
No, not so much, but a few things as we go on. I suppose the housemaid thing jumped out to me there as being
Mm.
quite odd.
I thought that because the descriptions of her were different. Within the same inquest, she is described in a different way. One is a housemaid, and then later describes herself as a house sharing person and close friend. And yeah, we'll touch on this. We'll touch on it later. The Thursday, July the 28th, 1994. There is an inquest opened into the death of Marie Kilmartin, but it's soon adjourned because the Gardaí have notified the judge that, sorry, Judge, there's an active investigation. We cannot disclose information, and obviously in relation to the arrest as well. There's a lot going on in the case. Judge accepts, that's fine. On Wednesday, June the 14th, 1995, following year, the inquest is reopened by coroner Dr. Patrick Greery, just 1 year after Marie's body was discovered and with nobody charged in the case. At an earlier stage of DNA forensics, years later, the procedure of washing a victim's clothing in warm water to ascertain matches and identity of clothing will be questioned, and whether such a procedure leads to the detriment of evidence. Professor John Harbison, the state pathologist at the time, confirmed that the only injury he found to Marie's body was a damaged and pressed larynx, supporting his conclusion of strangulation, manual strangulation. And while likely she died, Marie, within a day or two of her disappearance, he could not be certain of the exact date due to the composition of the remains. In April 1996, as part of Operation Shannon, investigating Gardaí conclude that Marie Kilmartin's murder is not linked to other such crimes and is something of a standalone case, but has been hampered by a lack of forensic evidence available. But Superintendent Noel McCarthy did suggest publicly that there was a possibility that one other unrelated crime might bring some progress to the case of Marie Kilmartin's case. Kieran.
That is perhaps the most interesting statement the guards made on the whole thing, isn't it?
It's interesting and it's odd.
Yeah, it's odd, but it's also fairly telling. Like, the guards don't usually say such things, and to say it at the inquest as well.
And
I suppose it is the type of comment though that will just lead to speculation, though, really, isn't it? You know, that's all.
That's all we can do. Read it. It is what it is. That's all. That's all we can do. I don't. All we can. I'll read it. Actually, I'll read it again. But Superintendent Noel McCarthy did suggest publicly that there was a possibility that one other unrelated crime, not person, crime, might bring some progress to the case of Marie Kilmartin's case. That's it. You can read into that what you want. 2006 to 2008, the Marie Kilmartin case is reviewed a number of times over the years by the NCBI. That particularly was in 2007. That's the National Criminal Bureau of Investigations. But by 2006, it is clear Gardaí have identified their primary suspects and that they believe that more than one person was involved in a murder, specifically in abducting, moving her body to deposit at Pims Lane. By 2008, the NCBI recommend the Gardaí re-interview absolutely every witness and suspect available in the case. What remains unclear is how 2 to 3 people conspired over a 24-hour period to lure Marie from her home, keep her in their company overnight of June 16th through to 17th, the Friday, and murder soon after.
And also, she was in the supermarket as well, and then the car
crazy
park.
Prices, and then possibly, although we're not sure, in the church car park with this beige car that we're not certain how valid that is, but, you know, again...
To use that word again, very odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
September the 22nd to 23rd, 2008. Gardaí make 3 arrests. A man and a woman in their 60s and a man aged 42. All are released without charge. They are the same 3 suspicious people from 14 years earlier, with at least 2 related to each other. No charges are recommended after Gardaí send their case file to the DPP. Incidentally, I might have mentioned 3 men in the case. It was a female, a male, and then the younger male up there.
42.
Yeah. 2014, Marie's friend and housemate, Patricia Doyle, dies. Aine. Aine is Marie Kilmartin's daughter. Today, in June 2024, as we record, she is 9 years older than the age her mother was murdered. After a short time with her mother Marie in a mother and baby home, you'll see a card up there about the Ireland's Pandora's box. It goes, if someone from afar is wondering what is a mother and baby home and what's that about in Ireland, that feature we did will tell you an awful lot about it. So go check it out, but wait, check it out afterwards. She was adopted by wider family members, Aine. It wasn't until she was 20 years of age in 2000 that she discovered who her birth mother was. A family relative confided the disclosure. I believe it was a cousin. And yet, in family gatherings, she had met Marie many times, or several times, I think she refers to in articles before, and held a deep affection for her. Since 2006, after visiting the bog where her mother's body was found, Aine launched numerous media campaigns through newspapers. That was radio and television, all in the hope of getting long overdue justice for her mother. That's just mementos she laid at the site where her mother's remains were found. Marie gave birth to Aine on March 29th, 1990, and she was distraught when a newborn was taken from her at just a few days old. A place of safety order was allegedly taken at Portlaoise District Court in May 1980, and a subsequent forced adoption took place. Aine, who was printed and circulated dozens of posters in the Portlaoise and Mountmellick area, believes there was more than one person involved in the murder and disposal of her mother's body several metres down into the deep bog drain at Pims Lane. Aine is strongly of the opinion... Go on, Kieran.
Yeah, Mick, we discussed this before coming on, and like we pretty much concluded that it had to be more than one person involved in disposal.
We've discussed this in other cases.
Yeah.
While we...
You can't always say, but
you can't be always, you can't always be certain, but you've got to look at the circumstances and the timing, the accessibility of an area, to ask yourself how feasible, particularly if you're dealing with, let's be blunt, a dead body. You're not bringing somebody to an area to murder them and then conceal them. You're bringing somebody potentially to an area who is already deceased. That makes things more complicated in accessibility and transport and how you do that. And that is an incredibly difficult task to do without assistance of another. And then you can conceal something on your own if you've done it on your own, but it's ever more difficult if you've done it in the knowledge or assistance of other people.
That's for sure.
In 2018, Aine delivered a dossier of points and questions for the then newly appointed Garda Commissioner Drew Harris. 2019, the courts, Gardaí seek and are approved to transfer and preserve video and audio cassette evidence digitally of suspects they have interviewed. We're going to move on to our conclusions and analysis. Now, from the outset, it's clear that Marie Kilmartin had come from a tightly knit family, and her well-being was a concern to the family and friends. When someone grows up with mental health issues, despite some recovery and stability of their illness, insecurities, and in this case accompanying phobias, there remains a significant aspect of vulnerability. It's an inbuilt thing in all of us. We all have vulnerabilities, but those with prolonged terms of living with mental illness and depression are always at moderate to high risk, no matter how strong a support network they have and the importance of living an independent life. That vulnerability remains. It's easy for it to be exploited by strangers. It's ever more disturbing if it's exploited by somebody known and trusted to that person. Once Marie Kilmartin's body was found 6 months after she disappeared, in dreadful circumstances, strangled and dumped like a dead animal in a bog ditch, Gardaí already had long honed their possibilities and where their suspicions lay. Thankfully for her family, her body was at least found, unlike so many other cases we've looked at. Marie Kilmartin isn't another exclusive member of the media-driven vanishing triangle of women. Marie didn't easily trust people. She was ultra careful about her security and was not a risk taker. Her own vulnerabilities had actually taught her, as she matured into her 30s, to be more astute, more careful.
Best way to say would be she had her wits about her when it came to things like this.
Yes, she did.
You know,
she
wouldn't put herself in a dangerous situation.
She does not strike me as a woman to be underestimated. Despite all her challenges and what she went through in life, she was not a woman to be underestimated. Marie Kilmartin was murdered by someone she knew, someone she trusted, not some random opportunist stranger. She was called on an ex-directory home phone number and lured from her home by someone she knew. Post sightings of her the following day, that following morning to lunchtime, while not returning to her home, all have her within a short distance and radius of her home. She was fully clothed when she was eventually found in her resting place. She wasn't burgled, the house wasn't burgled, she wasn't mugged, she wasn't robbed, she wasn't violently beaten and sexually assaulted, because that's personal. The motive isn't sex. She was manually strangled before being dumped in the bog ditch. That's personal in light of the circumstances. Her body was found in Mount Mellick, less than 15 kilometres from her Beladd home. I think it varies that side. I've seen 15 to 26 kilometres for Pim's Line.
I think Mount Melnick it's a kind of a large region, well, by Irish standards, isn't it? There's no real kind of centre point to it,
There are dynamics in this case that I find disturbing. I've alluded to them earlier. There are a whole host of red flags that clearly fit why the Gardaí investigation team and later case review teams from 2006 to 2021 have maintained very specific lines of inquiry, potential motive, and have re-interviewed witnesses and suspects. It is entirely understandable that they simply will not disclose what further details they know on this case, with the potential of further arrests and a case for prosecution, future prosecution perhaps. But time, like 31 years, never helps in a case. Marie Kilmartin did not return to her home as expected when she left around 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, December the 16th. But wait, she's witnessed over several hours by two women who knew her well within the general vicinity of her locale in a somewhat odd and distressed state. So there's questions. Where did Marie Kilmartin spend the night of December the 16th, Kieran?
Yeah, like I know now, like I'm saying this that because I take the women's sighting in the supermarket and at the Peter and Paul church as 100 as bona fide, like, so it's such a bizarre set of events that, like, where did she spend, as you said, where did she spend the night before? And if she was with the people that killed her, which you would think she was, how did she end up in the supermarket by herself?
By herself,
in the car park by herself. Two separate locations. Like,
so how certain can we be that she didn't? And this is an important point, because I think it's been glossed over. There's an assumption here, and the assumption is to do with Patricia Doyle. How certain can we be that she didn't actually return home or somewhere else close to it that she knew and trusted to stay after 6 p.m? Who, how and why did she end up at the Midlands Health Centre between 10 and 11 a.m. on the following morning? That's the May White sighting. So we have to ask honest questions here. And I don't think we should just assume she absolutely whatsoever did not return home. The only person we have to rely on that is Patricia Doyle, who is no longer alive and with us now. She is the only person who ever said Marie Kilmartin never came home that evening. Only person.
Yeah. You're right, it's only one person's account. It's a bit like, remember we did the Dean Roach case, like once it kind of went past the taxi man, that case, then all other accounts are kind of up for debate, aren't they? When it's just like
this is the problem. Why did Patricia Doyle, having built up such a trusted bond and relationship, live with Marie in two abodes over 13 years, knew her personally and her medical history, she was her nurse, and her vulnerabilities, tried to retire and go to bed on the night of December the 16th, 1993, already knowing she'd phoned the care centre, already knowing that Marie's work colleagues and friends hadn't seen her after they dropped her home, and other colleagues hadn't seen her that evening. She hadn't turned up for the girls' get-together. What house phone call logs did the Gardaí have of 12 Beladd Lower after 6 p.m. that evening, and who precisely were they made to? Why, knowing Marie's vulnerabilities, wasn't the Gardaí contacted that evening, not later the following day? And who exactly contacted the Gardaí? Patricia Doyle? Or was it actually the neighbour with the sergeant from the Garda station? Yeah. I'm struggling to understand the full dynamic of the relationship between Patricia Doyle and Marie Kilmartin. Marie bought the house in Beladd with the help of her father, Fred, a well-off businessman. Their relationship began as nurse and patient 13 years earlier, progressed to close friends and housemates. But, in reality, Marie was the owner and the landlord, and Patricia Doyle the long-term tenant, described by one witness in the 1995 inquest as a housemaid. I can't get my head around what's going on here.
No, and you certainly, like, as you read into the case from the start, you don't get the impression that Patricia is a tenant in the house and Marie's the landlord. You never really get that impression until the full facts of the case.
Essentially, this was presented as two close friends simply living in the house together. You don't get the sense of tenant and landlord. You don't get the sense of
because they used
woman
to leave notes
and her house
they went out and all this type of stuff. Yeah.
And you know, one thing I touched upon earlier, in the piece we heard from Patricia says that Marie said to her that morning, I'm not sure, I'm a bit unsure of maybe going out with the girls that evening. They're planning something, a get together, you know, after the party we have in the nursing home. Is that okay? Is that okay, Patricia? Why the hell was she asking Patricia, was it okay? She's an adult. She's a grown woman. She owns this home. Why was she asking Patricia, was it okay? I just don't understand the dynamic. It's almost like Patricia was almost acting like a mother, and maybe that's how it progressed. They were very close friends, but somehow there's more of a complexity that Marie saw her more as a motherly figure, And I think
Detective
Patricia
Figure or
was
something.
slightly, just a few years older, and maybe she felt
Yeah,
just
nurse.
automatically, in deference to her, that you might be my housemate, my house sharing friend, close friend, but is it all right if I meet the girls after work? Jesus, that's something you ask your mammy or your daddy when you're a kid. Like, is it all right if I stay out late tonight? You know, I really cannot understand what dynamics were going there.
No,
And
strange thing there.
if you feel I'm being unfair, say so in the comments. But there's something more about the dynamics there that I can't get my head around. Where was I? In the relationship to the December the 17th, 1993 morning to the noon sightings by both May White and Christine Dwyer, who both knew Marie well, likely not aware of the full circumstances of the moments of their brief meetings, it's easy to ask why May didn't offer a lift to Marie in the car park, inquire if she was just arriving or she leaving, do you want a lift, are you alright? Or Christine, later at crazy prices, to delay and say, after Marie asked her, can you stay with me, why do you need me to stay with you? Are you sure everything's alright? And just somehow put off that engagement or meeting she had later. Look, I'm sure both witnesses have gone over all of these ideas in their own heads and asked themselves questions. Why didn't I stay? Why didn't I stop for Marie and ask her, are you in for an appointment, Marie? Do you want to lift home? Or are you just going in? Why didn't Christine say, come on, let's go for a coffee? I do have an engagement. I'll make a phone call. What's going on? What's up with you,
It's
girl?
just one of those. It's just one of those things that, like, in everyday life, is so insignificant
Things
that
just
this
happen
turns
and
out to
catch you
be
out in the
then so
moment, and
significant.
it's
Yeah,
I want to emphasize, people, please don't be hard on these women, Christine and May. They did what they did in the moment, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. And so let's get away from being judgmental on people. It's not hard to think an intervention might have changed things as to what exactly was going on with Marie Kilmartin that
you never
morning,
know these things.
but we'll never know, and whether it might have sidetracked and changed things, and we might have understood what was more going on, but we'll never know. That's all whataboutery. Whatever happened to Marie Kilmartin, it occurred on the afternoon of Friday, December the 17th, 1993, when we know she was still alive. The events of December the 16th through to the 17th are packed with if-onlys. What if the two Frances had taken up the offer of going in for a cup of tea at 12 Beladd Lower when they dropped Marie home? They could have been there when the phone call came to the house that lured Marie out, and maybe they might have asked, Marie, do you mind us asking, who was on the phone? You need to go out now. Why do you need to go out now? You sure you want? It's dark out there. Do you want us to drop you wherever you're going, whoever you're meeting? That could have changed so much, but it's all what ifs and whataboutery. Who was watching and monitoring Marie that day, if anyone? Who was the person who made the phone call from the call box across from St. Fintan's Hospital? If Marie was held somewhere overnight, why would you, against her will, then later release her on the morning, let her go wandering off on her own, December the 17th, on the Friday, and then return to pick her up and murder her and dispose of her body? It's struggle to get your head. And yet, for whatever motives and reasons, that appears to be what's exactly transpired here, by one or more persons unknown. What happened to Marie Kilmartin lies in some of the answers to the above questions. Marie Kilmartin didn't walk from crazy prices in Portlaoise at noon on December the 17th, 1993 to Pym's Lane, Mount Mellick, strangle herself and then hurl herself into a fucking bog ditch. Persons or persons unknown to us, but likely very well known to Marie, took her there, and the events and planning which led to her death began on or before December the 16th for whatever motive. This wasn't any stranger involved in this case. This wasn't any vanishing triangle. Kieran, your final thoughts?
Well, I suppose we went through most of the stuff, I
Mhm.
suppose, that I wanted to say as we went through the case, but I think the guards are very much still on this, aren't they?
Mhm.
It seems that like one or two little things could just have to break for them, and the DPP might proceed with charges.
I think it may be all down to the suspects identified, and I can't say for now of the three of I know, and I will now disclose now there were actually 4 suspects in total in this case. I believe all 4 were interviewed, and were interviewed more than once. At least 2 of them are related.
Yeah, sorry, just to gather my thoughts there again. As I said, we went through most of it as we kind of went through the case,
Yeah.
but I guess the very poignant question would be: is the housemate an objective witness? That's vital to the case.
Yeah.
A lot hinders on that. That's a very like vital point, and I just cannot get my head around the circumstances that
It's
she
the
was last seen in
it's
her
but
house.
it's the what gets me is okay. I'm not gonna go over it again. The housemate, house sharing friend, close nurse.
Housemate.
It's the not supposedly, according to Patricia, Marie not going home, which is totally out. That's probably the number one bizarre point. Marie does not return
Leave her
home,
house at night.
according to
No.
Patricia. And then secondly, the next major point that doesn't fit or make sense is Marie then being in a distressed state and witnessed the following morning, but where's she been? What's gone on there? I can't get my head around. Something doesn't fit with
No, so it doesn't add
what
up. And I'm sure the guards.
apparently
That's what
happened
they're thinking.
on the Thursday night in reality to what did happen, and what happened on the Friday morning as to what did happen. Because it seems to me what happened on the Friday morning is the more accurate. That Marie was in a more distressed state and was witnessed by 2 people. What's not certain is what exactly happened on the Thursday evening. Did Marie actually go back home, and where did she spend that evening between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. the following day? What occurred during those
14 hours or so, isn't it?
14, 16 hours? Who was she
16
with?
hours, yeah.
Where was she? And what was going on? I'll be honest. Myself and Karen, we've also looked into the kidnapping aspect. A well-off family.
Yeah.
Was there some motive for abducting Marie, and that somehow it went pear-shaped, it went wrong, or Marie got out of wherever she was being held and consequently was in that disorientated state? Is that what happened? But what exactly would the motive be? Nobody was looking for
somebody
money.
Somebody who'd be that brazen and would like then have the knowledge about her family's money or whatever wouldn't like let her escape twice around her hometown. Basically, they would have taken her to a further away location that night, surely.
Yeah, and whatever deed was done it there and then as quickly as possible. But like I said, was there some intention to extort money or something from the family? I don't know. And then why deposit our body so in relative terms so close to our home? I really can't. It's I can't get my head around. There's something. There's a missing link between Thursday evening and Friday morning and who Marie was with. Someone is not being honest with their account of what happened.
Yeah.
And I do not think the people on Friday are being dishonest. And that's
No, and there's no way both of them are.
Yeah,
they're separate people.
That's all I'm going to say about honesty in this case. I think all the witness reports are being honest on the Friday of what occurred. I am more circumspect about what happened on that Thursday evening and the honesty and alibis being given on the Thursday evening.
For sure.
And that's
no,
where
just my final
lies.
thought then really on the case would be, I suppose there just be have to be a few little one or two things, even one thing just to break for the guards for the DPP to send them another file and the DPP to proceed with charges. I wouldn't say it's like in some of the other cases that we've done, you would think such a thing would be far off, but in this case, it mightn't be too far away.
No, this case is clearly not that. I know people get frustrated and they say that, this case, for God's sake, 31 years, forget it, that case is there. I don't think this case is too far away. There's an element missing. There's a person or two that still needs to come forward and be frank and give honest details now. And give Marie Kilmartin's family and Aine, her daughter, some respite and some answers. But they have to talk now, and we say it so often. And this is the problem in towns, in villages, and secrecy. We speak about this so much in cases. It's that silence, that deafening silence. On people who just want to go to the grave with knowledge and are perfectly happy or appear to be perfectly happy to live their lives while someone else they know suffers, knowing that they can end that suffering. Thank you for joining us for episode 49 of Radio Spoil. Can't believe we're actually almost on the peak of episode 50. However, I will say to you, don't know what we have planned for episode 50, but we're taking a well-earned break, myself and Kieran, from the timelines in June. And our next episode won't be probably until the very end of June or early July. We do have some special features coming up for you, lined up. We both need to take a break from some of these cases. Kieran and I will also be meeting. We'll be both meeting together. You might actually see us together, not on screen together, but you might actually see us in a real photo together.
No, that'll be too much for people. You don't want to disturb people too much on that. I don't think YouTube would let that through.
So listen.
So hopefully we'll come up with some ideas anyway for the future.
That's what we're looking at. We're looking at some planning in June, and I'm back in Ireland for a couple of weeks, and we have some planning meetings coming up for Radio Spoil and the future, and we'll keep you up to date with those plans. Until then, this was coverage of the Marie Kilmartin case. Take care and God bless to all of you, and we'll be back together soon, I promise you, but it won't be until the end of next month, probably early July, more likely. Okay, take care.